Hello, and my name is Nathalie Croix, and welcome. And also, thank you so much for joining the training. So what I want to do today is definitely go over the curriculum for the 200-hour. And I do offer a 300-hour yoga teacher training as well, and some people were emailing me about that, but I guess I'll do a whole info session on that separately. So I just want to focus on this one. So who am I? How long have I been doing this? So I had a yoga studio. The name of it is Shanti Yoga Shala, which I had it for 8 years. The studio was located on Magazine Street, uptown New Orleans. And before that, I was working in Los Angeles, and I worked for a pretty big studio over there called Yoga Works. I am 500-hour registered yoga teacher and trainer, ERIT, which is the next level of the 500-hour. Been doing trainings now for a really long time. I guess like maybe Shanti, I started Shanti Yoga Training School a little bit over, maybe like 6 years ago. And since then, we've graduated over 100 students. Before that, I was collaborating with teacher trainings in Los Angeles area. So besides the yoga teacher training certifications here, I trained in India for a really long time during a period of 10 years. And if you do enroll in my training, you guys will get a lot of that piece of it because it was an important piece. The teacher that I trained with, his name is Patabi Joyce. I went there 4 times. I also joined him on several places around the world. He is the founder of ASHTANGA yoga, which is the first form of vinyasa flow. So vinyasa flow, which is flow yoga, sometimes you can hear, maybe you guys have heard power yoga or flow yoga, different names, but they all come, the birth of that is Ashtanga yoga. So what that means is movement linked to breath. Vinyasa means movement linked to breath. So for those of us who are attracted, my teacher training is a flow yoga, vinyasa yoga based teacher training. And we go all the way to the root of Ashtanga. I don't really teach the Ashtanga. I do like a weekend of an Ashtanga sort of overview, just for the sake of knowledge and the sake of, standing on the shoulders of the past, kind of going back and seeing how yoga developed and how did it start. I mean, that's where the first sun salutations come from, So those of you, if you go to, I'm assuming you go to yoga classes, you see inhale, reach the arms up, exhale, fold forward, inhale, halfway up, chaturanga, up dog, down dog. So that's kind of how that developed. Before that, it was more like kind of postures here and there, but there wasn't like a system. So what is a system of yoga? This is important for us to know. A system of yoga is one that has sort of like a, you can call it guru or a master teacher, but that we can trace it down and that they have a very specific method in how they teach. So for example, Bikram yoga is a system, right? Bikram, if you've ever been to the hot yoga Bikram, it's like pose A, pose B, pose C, it's always the same. Ashtanga yoga, it's always the same. They have primary series all the way up to 6 series, always the same. Iyengar yoga, very systematic. They focus on alignment, but they got a very, system down. There's many of those. The one that we are doing now, which is, most of you, if you go to flow yoga studios, flow yoga, vinyasa yoga, as we know it today, it's not a system, okay? So what does that mean? It means we borrow from these different systems, but we are not a system. We don't have like a guru or anything like that. It's kind of like what yoga really has developed a lot more in the West the past few years. And I believe yoga is like the fastest growing fitness, if you want to call it fitness, but industry, fastest growing, more than like anything else. So we borrow from different systems. In this training that I teach, the Shanti Yoga Training School, we primarily borrow from Iyengar. So what does that mean? It's heavily focused on alignment. Where is your knee? Hug the outer right hip into the midline. I'll give you guys some examples, like lift the back ribs, relax the front rib, and relax the shoulders, soften the front ribs. These are called alignment. Tadasana is a standing pose. So Tadasana is the blueprint of all yoga postures. That's the standing pose, something as simple as standing up. You know, a lot of my trainees, I don't know, I said I had over 100 that are like certified graduate, but I probably have like 200. And if I ask a lot of them, what was the one thing that most impacted you out of the training, besides that it transforms your life, body, mind, spirit, like you living your yoga on and off the mat. So usually, it shifted something at home, at work, with your family, always for the better. I mean, yoga is just yoga. You can't go wrong with that, but in terms of the physical practice, it's like, okay, so what is it? And they'll tell me, many of them will say Tadasana, standing pose, because it's kind of like how you drive. You drive and you're sitting up tall in your car. You start thinking that, and you actually like literally grow a few inches when you're standing up tall. And then you can find that space and that awareness of the Tadasana in all of the yoga postures that you do on your mat. So it's kind of like when you're standing in grocery, look at your feet. Are they parallel? Are you arching your spine? Are you back bending all the time? I mean, that's, so what we're going for is like, we're trying to create a practice on the mat that's going to reflect how we are outside of the mat. So for optimal health, so that's kind of my main thing. I think what I'm going to do right now is go over the curriculum with you guys again, just because I definitely want to cover this, and then we can go into logistics. So the art of sequencing. Okay, the reason I'm going to read this is because Yoga Loft published this, and I might have given them this, but the curriculum that I have has like 50 of these. There's like a lot more, but we just don't have time to cover all of that. How do I teach it? Is it like in this order? Not at all. It's just kind of like, when you sign up for that amount of weeks with me, then you are just going to, depending on the day, depending who's in the room, depending how everything is going and developing, that I bring this in and out. But you will cover this. Some of them, you're going to cover this multiple weekends because it does come up. So the art of sequencing, how to sequence a yoga class. It's not just a bunch of poses that are just kind of thrown in. I hope not, but so it's, what I teach you guys is a method. The method that I learned, where I got my training at, which is Yoga Works. Yoga Works was founded by this amazing woman. Her name is Mati Isradi, and she recently actually passed very suddenly. We were all very sad in the yoga community, but Mati is very special. She is a teacher's teacher. She trained with Iyengar, and very thoroughly for a long time. So very, very thorough with alignment. And she also trained with my teacher, Patabi Joyce, for a while. So it's kind of the perfect mix of flow, vinyasa, movement linked to breath, and alignment, and also creating a practice that's lifelong. So why this is very important, because we don't want to, sometimes I go to some yoga classes and the sequence doesn't really make a lot of sense on the body. There's a certain way that if your body moves anatomically, it makes more sense. So in our method, we place the external standing poses together, externals linked with externals, which you guys will learn more in the training, but I can give you a crash course right now. And then we link the neutrals to the neutrals. This is much better for your body, and this is much better for a lifelong practice. So for example, what is an external pose? If you turn the whole right leg out in a pose like triangle, Trikonasana triangle is an external. Warrior two is an external because you turn one leg out. What is not an external? So when you're standing up tall in Tadasana, just the midline is your spine. The hips are hugging into the midline, your spine. That's called neutral pose. Tadasana is a neutral. So if you can think of like crescent lunge, just one leg steps back, right? And the arms are up. That's a neutral. Let's think about crescent lunge twist. That's a neutral. triangle, twist, that's a neutral. And so there is a method on how to do that. Once we get through the standing poses, where do we put, for example, inversions, right? And so there's two different groups of inversions, and I have a whole weekend on this that I teach: passive inversions and active inversions. So you want to do your active inversions kind of in the middle of your class, because think about it, this is kind of intuitive. Shavasana, which if you've all, I'm assuming you've all been to a yoga class, that last pose that we love, Shavasana, that's like final relaxation, right? So that's a very lunar pose. It's a very calming and soothing pose. And hopefully by the time you get to Shavasana, you are very relaxed and you're very, very calm and you're completely letting go. So it would be kind of counterintuitive to do poses that are very heat building, very stimulating, such as, you know, in the beginning when we're learning headstand and handstand and things like that. They can be challenging poses. So we want to not put them right by Shavasana. We want to kind of have poses that are more calming. In our method, we do like long holds of seated asanas. Asanas are poses toward, you know, to coming down toward Shavasana. It's kind of like so that you're unwinding. So when you finally drop into that Shavasana, your mind is completely dropped. Now, so in the middle of the class, yes, let's play with that. So maybe that's where I would teach a pose like handstand, half handstand, how to get into a half handstand, how to get into dolphin, you know, if you can't do handstand, you do dolphin. By the way, our training, we modify, you know, there's always a modification, which is why I'm frankly not quite very concerned about the level. Like, I don't require that anybody be level 3. In fact, I prefer that we have different levels in the room. That way we can see together as a group, a community, while you're in the training, how to learn the same method, the same, you know, practice and poses on different bodies. Because ultimately, we're not teaching yoga. Yes, we're teaching yoga, but we're teaching people. And people, we're individuals. There's no cookie cutter format. It's like we're all individuals, and the practice works differently for different people depending on where you are, what's going on in your life. And the only thing we know is that everything is always changing. So even if you are somebody that, you know, you can do all the handstands in the world, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be you for the rest of your life. And also, I'm going to add that if we're lucky enough, we're going to age, right? Life is a gift. So if we're lucky enough, we're going to age. And if we do age, we want to cultivate our practice for longevity, for lifelong practice, which is why I am really big into creating a fun practice, yes, challenging, yes, but also a healthy practice, you know, a practice that's safe. And there's many, you know, and there's many different ways that we can do that. Like, I can give you guys one pose when we're teaching in the training, when we're practicing, and then that pose you can actually like kind of back off and mellow it out if you need to that day. You can do it the way I'm teaching it, or you can kind of do one step further if you're on a day that you feel, you know, very motivated and athletic and you want more. There's always an opportunity. So, okay, so we got that, the art of sequencing. That, okay, so then when we get in, after the headstands, handstands, when you're first learning, get heat building, we move into back bends. Back bends are great for your body. You can do simple back bends. You can do, you know, more intense back bends. Usually, traditionally, classically, they're offered in groups of 3 or 5s. So you kind of repeat them. When you're doing back bends, you're opening your front body quite a lot. So the best thing to do after back bends, it's core work. So when I say core work, you guys can think like abdominal work and all that. Yes, to that. But it can also be something as simple as holding plank pose for like, you know, a few seconds. As a teacher, you have to kind of feel your students. And that's something that I teach you guys over time. You'll learn that. So then when we're done with the core work, if you want to add it there, it could be optional, but I always say add it if you can. We go into poses that are a little bit more passive. So hip openers, easy twists, seated postures, long hold, and then making our way into Shavasana. If we want to do a meditation, even if it's a short meditation, like maybe a minute or 2 or 3, then you want to do your meditation before Shavasana and then close your practice with Shavasana. And then we have very specific standards of like, how long is your Shavasana? If it's a 1-hour class, we recommend 3 minutes. If it's an hour and 15 minutes, then there's, a little more. An hour and a half is a little more. So all that is stuff that I teach you guys. And not only that, you'll get a manual. And in my manual, you have the skeleton of the sequence. You have all of the poses with the Sanskrit name and English name on the back of the manual, as well as the level of each pose. Because another thing is for me to teach you guys how to level a class. In many studios, we're talking about open classes, like all levels. So that would technically be level 1/2. So you wanna choose poses from these different parts of the sequence that are level 1/2. You don't want to put a level 3 pose, when you only have level 1 students. If you're teaching level 1 students only, then you want to, like a beginner's yoga class or a workshop, then pick level 1 poses. But that we do together. We spend a lot of time on that. Sanskrit names of postures. That's just, going back to the roots of yoga, the birth. So I do teach you guys that. So I'll say a lot of times it's just call and response. And as I'm teaching, I say both the English name and Sanskrit name. So it will be, Tadasana, mountain pose, Trikonasana, and then everybody says Trikonasana, and that's triangle. Extended side angle is UTTHITA PARSVAKONASANA. Twisting triangle, PARIVRTTA TRIKONASANA, downward facing dog, ADHO MUKHA SVANASANA. We kind of learned that, and I was taught like that in India, to learn both English and Sanskrit. So I do think it's important. However, when you graduate, and we have a whole talk about this, I think that you just teach however it's authentic to you. I don't think that you have to teach in Sanskrit unless you want to, and it might change. The first year you might only do English names and then start playing with it. But I've seen everything. I've also seen people that right from the bat, they were very familiar with Sanskrit names. We have a lot of the Sanskrit names and poses written down, and we go over all that. We also have the business of yoga. I usually teach the business of yoga towards the end of the training. And what that is, I have some podcasts on Life on Earth podcast. So Life on Earth podcast, that's another resource that you guys have, the students. And basically this podcast was developed in the beginning. It was because we had so many guest teachers at my yoga studio for the teacher trainings. That we started recording those talks, and then I said, well, you know what, they're so great. Why not make it available for everyone? Because everyone can benefit from these talks. So we created Life on Earth podcast, which now I believe we have 50 something episodes. I don't know if it's 57 or 56 or, something like that, or maybe 58. So Life on Earth podcast actually covers a ton of this, and it's completely free. That's free content available for anyone. We're average, something that started again for this local yoga studio in New Orleans. Now we're averaging 1,500 downloads. I took a screenshot and I think I put it on our group, Life on Earth group, in my Instagram last week, because I got an email from Apple saying we were on the top 1% of alternative medicine podcast, which is really cool, so that's available there for you guys. And I definitely invite you to check it out so that you can kind of see a little bit of the teachings and also the people that we interview. So in the business of yoga, we go over contracts, we go over waivers, we go over, business cards, website, social media management, just how to deal with, if you're an independent contractor, how to deal with yoga studios, like, you know, the percentage, if you're doing a workshop, what's kind of the going rate, how to do privates, are you packaging your classes, are you doing one class, does the price change? So we look at all that. Liabilities, insurances, so much, you know, it involves like promoting. So on Life on Earth podcast, I have an episode, it's called You Are Your Own Brand. And it is, that episode is actually part of the business of yoga that I teach at the school. So if you guys want to check it out, the 8 limbs of yoga is yoga philosophy. This is the core, really the core, the heart of yoga. Earlier we talked about there's many different types of yoga out there. Many different types of yoga, many different styles, and some of them are systems. Well, yes, right? However, all of those follow the 8 limbs of yoga. No matter if it's Iyengar, Ashtanga, Bikram, whatever, Shivananda yoga, whatever else, it's the 8 limbs of yoga. It's the one kind of little book of manual that we have written by someone that nobody really knows exactly who he is or she or a group of people named Patanjali. And there are many yoga sutras. The 8 limbs of yoga is part of that. And we have 8. So that is the yamas and niyamas. I mean, lots of people are very familiar with this stuff. Asana, which is poses, pranayama, pratyahara, turning the senses inward, pranayama is breath, dharana, which is focus. And then you have dhyana, which is meditation, and samadhi, which is kind of like reaching enlightenment or the bliss body, right? But there's many different levels of samadhi. And if you are in my 300-hour teacher training, then we go deeper into different levels of samadhi. So the 200-hour teacher training for me is like fundamentals. And in fact, if you haven't done your 200-hour with me and you're going to go into the 300-hour, I require that you take half of the 200-hour, because otherwise the fundamentals, you just can't skip that. We can't, like, you know, build a house by putting the roof. We gotta start with the foundation. So how to teach beginners, how to sequence a yoga class, the 8 limbs of yoga, branding, hands-on adjustments. Are you touching people? Are you not touching people? If you're touching people, what kind of adjustments are you doing? Some adjustments are feel-good adjustments, right? So pressing, feel good. Some adjustments are teaching adjustments. Also, there's people who don't like to be touched, right? So all of that, there's teachers also who don't like to touch students. And listen, all of the above is okay, okay? You don't have to do anything unless you want to do it. And that's not just for yoga, hopefully. So smart alignment, what I call smart alignment in the flow, I really say like smart alignment in the flow. It's really kind of how to look at the body when the body is in motion, and how can we make better choices with each pose and throughout our sequence, so that so that we're going into this practice to nourish our body and not the opposite, you know? So there's so many things in life that's already stressful. Yoga does not need to be one of them. So we want to cultivate our practice to bring us into a state of joy, a state of presence in the moment. So, you know, for me, I've been practicing for like maybe 30 years or 25 years. My practice is always changing. You know, my practice is always changing. Some days it's more fiery. Some days it's totally lunar, like restorative yoga. Yoga Nidra. I teach you guys how to teach Yoga Nidra, which I love. It's like one of my, you know, favorite things in the world. Very relaxing. I mean, I'm really big into meditation. So some days my practice is very mellow, depending on what's going on in my life. And it's not just physical, you know, like you might be that you just emotionally need something more supportive. And then some days you want to be a little more active. You want to add more fire. You want more, yoga, we call it tapas, fire. and then do that, you know, then you can do that. And I'm there to support you with that too. Because I've definitely, again, had a time in my life, there's days in my life I love, you know, doing sun salutations with handstands, all the chaturangas in the world. And there's times that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do child's pose, half of the class. And so the yoga for me today the real yoga for me, I mean, this is my perspective, has become an inquiry. Like, how am I feeling today in this moment? Knowing that without attachment, how I'm feeling today is not necessarily how I'm going to be feeling tomorrow or how I was feeling yesterday. So the yoga, the interesting thing with the yoga is, can you really, you know, access that present moment, like the present moment with inquiry, right? Like, how are we feeling right now? That's my practice. As much as my practice is doing the postures and the breath and the meditation and all the stuff, it's also the ability to connect with my own self on a deep level and to be true and authentic to where I am each time in my life. So anyways, and then we have yoga for lifelong practice, which we kind of talked about. A lot of our stuff revolves around that. And we actually, just so you guys know, because this is kind of cool, we do exercises that we create sequences for different demographics. And we have demographics that are like 75, you know, years old. I mean, I had a student who practiced with me till he was like in his 90s. So that was really cool, you know, and down dog is like on the wall, you know, and so we create sequences for different demographics from like teenagers to, you know, 80 years old. And because hopefully, like I said, if we're lucky, that's going to be us one day. So we want to be familiar with that. How to effectively use props. Props are not a handicap. It is wonderful. Blocks, belts, bolsters. They're wonderful. They're here to assist us. And so let's learn how to use them. There's lots of different techniques, lots of different ways to use. You don't always have to use them, but, you know, again, always kind of evaluate your practice and see if you need it. So props are great, and we definitely work a lot with props. And I also teach you how to teach your students how to work with props, which this is a very important part of the training, because this is why I like having people different levels in my training, different body types, because this way you are going to be a better teacher. You know, when I had my studio, I had public class almost every day. I taught all the time public classes, and I was able to like scan the room, almost like a triage. Like, you know, doctors have triage in hospitals. We have triage as yoga teachers too. Like, who needs my assistance right now? And, you know, you have like split seconds to make a decision, especially if you're teaching flow. And you go in and you adjust and you assist, you bring a prop or you take one out, whatever, and then you get out of the person's space. So that's really cool. Finding your teaching voice. Who are you? You know, setting an intention. I have all my students set an intention for the teacher training before you start. I have you actually email it to me. And, you know, set an intention for the training. It's okay if the intention changes along the way, but what is it that you want? Why are you here? Same way with, even when you're graduating, we reevaluate that. We do an exercise that we look into, so where will you be in 6 months? And we do a projection, you know, so what kind of teacher do you want to be? You don't have to be a certain teacher for the rest of your life, but start with something so that you can get clear, you know, and the more clear that you are, the clearer you'll be with other people. So that's great. Finding your teaching voice. And like I said, I don't think everybody, I give you guys a lot of tools, but then if you ask me, like, do you think I should always adjust people? My answer to you is going to be, it depends. And then my next answer to you is going to be, do you want to? Right? So I am a really big as like, do what you feel comfortable with and teach what you want to teach. And that's really going to cultivate your authenticity, and you're going to be able to figure out, like, you know, how you want to teach. Like, by now I know things that I want to do and that I want to teach, and, you know, learning when to say yes and when to say no. And I also know, like, okay, these types of things in yoga are just not my thing, and I'm just not going to do it. you know, so stay with what you love. That's always the best thing. Meditation, we do a lot of meditation techniques. I teach you guys a lot of almost everyone who graduates with, like, you know, feeling really comfortable with a consistent meditation technique. I introduce you guys to some apps that I work with while you're in the training. That this is a really nice part of the training. Yoga Nidra, it's an amazing technique. It's a healing technique. You're laying down in Shavasana the whole time. So I bring you guys through Yoga Nidra several times, and then I teach you how to teach Yoga Nidra to your students, and so that you can do that. And also there's a lot about the Yoga Nidra in my online platform. When you sign up for the training, you have lifetime access to the 200-hour platform if you're in the 200-hour training. And the platform is quite extensive, and you can actually look at it. Go to lifeonearthpodcast.com after this call. And then when you go on courses, you're just going to look for the 200-hour, and it gives you all the curriculum. So that's something that you just kind of do on your own. I developed this over the years. A lot of my work is in there, and I just like for you all to have that. So we have a whole thing on Yoga Nidra, and the Yoga Nidra scripts that we use for you to use with your students in the beginning. They're all in there. Then we have the chakra system. So in the 200-hour, we go over the chakra sum, okay? We go over the chakra sum. In the 300-hour, we go over the chakra a ton. So I give you guys sort of the fundamentals, because we have so much to cover in the 200 that the chakras, like, you know, it's not going to take like the whole training. It just can't. It's impossible, because the chakras could be a whole 100-hour, you know. So, but we do a lot of it. I also have a series on Life on Earth podcast covering the 7 main chakras. I think we are on chakra 5 now, so we've got 2 more that are going to be released soon. And I also have an online course on the chakras. But on your platforms, the chakra online course is on your 200-hour platform. And we also do it some at the studio. Chakras are amazing. They are energy vortexes. They're centers that they're along the spine. It is, the 7 main chakras are, the first one is the Muladhara. The color is red. It's at the base of your spine. The element is earth. The second one is the Swahisthana. The element is water, and the color is orange. The third one is the Manipura. The element is fire, and the color is yellow. Then you have your heart chakra, Anahata, green. Air is the element. Vishuddha is the throat. The color is blue, and the element is sound. And then you have the Ajna chakra, third eye. The element is light, and the color is indigo. And then you have Sahasrara, the crown chakra, and that one, the element is thought. The first color of that one is violet, but then it's white, because white encompasses all colors. So essentially, the chakras it's a movement. Each one of them gathers information. Every day when we're talking to people, we're accessing information with our energy field. That's also known as our aura or light body. And this is the subtle body, right? So every time you get on your mat and you do your yoga practice, you are accessing your subtle body. This is why when you get out of yoga, you say yoga glow, you know, it feels so good because you cleared your body. So the chakras, they have this kind of thing that they get information from spaces and places and people. They process it, and then they kind of, you know, they're in your system. So hopefully if you have a well-balanced chakra and everything is going well, you're eating healthy, you're sleeping well, and you have a good lifestyle, you're meditating, practicing yoga, journaling, then your chakras are more balanced. So what I do with you guys is I teach you guys through many methods and techniques how to balance your chakras. I'm also doing a chakra workshop on, I believe it's September 7th at Loft in Bay St. Louis, where we will go through a yoga sequence to clear the chakras and balance them, and then through a meditation that involves healing techniques like Reiki. So yeah, I didn't tell you guys yet, but I'm also a Reiki energy healer. I've been doing this for about 4 years now, actually. And I work with, clients every week with Reiki. So I incorporate a lot of my Reiki and energy healing stuff in the chakra system and as well as in Yoga Nidra. So you guys sometimes in the training will get kind of like a healing session / Yoga Nidra. And it's just really cool. It just makes you feel really good. And it's, just us. So that's the chakras for you. And like I said, we can go a lot more into it. I teach you guys about retreats, how to set up a retreat. It could be a day retreat, weekend retreat. There's lots of different ways. What do you get once you graduate? You get an internationally recognized certification. Our school is accredited through Yoga Alliance, which is kind of like the only international organ for yoga at the moment. If you want to get your certificate and you want to register with Yoga Alliance, it is available through our school automatically. And if you choose not to, because you're not in alignment with Yoga Alliance, or you just don't care about that, then don't do it. I have people who have gone through the training and could care less about the certification. They just wanted to deepen their practice. Many of my students, in fact, at my yoga studio have gone through my training because they just wanted to deepen their practice. They wanted to learn about all this stuff. And, but, a lot of them at the end, they get so inspired and it's so cool and so fun that you want to share it with people. So even people who, a lot of times we're like, I'm just doing this for myself, end up teaching. A lot of my teachers are working teachers. In New Orleans, I have many teachers in many studios. Live Oak on Magazine Street, I'd say 90% of their teachers are graduates from my 200 and 300 hour. The owner as well of the studio. Bay St. Louis, I have a couple girls there. I have teachers that have gone through this, everywhere, and they're really good teachers. So the community is a big aspect of the training. That's called Sangha. In Patanjali calls it Sangha, the one who wrote the Yoga Sutras. And that's community. And that's something that I really love with the trainings, is that we get together those weekends and we kind of share the love that we have for the practice. Everybody gets to share. When you have a question, most likely other people have that question too. So I always invite everyone to share, and get the word out, because it's just great, because then everybody gets to learn from each other. And we, my trainees, a lot of them I'm in contact with today. They continue, even the ones that did the 200 and the 300 hour, they're still continuing with Zoom sessions, YACEP, which is continuing education. Again, this is a lifelong practice. We do retreats every year. We do workshops. So, I'm very lucky because I get very close with everyone and I get to see people's progress. In the 300 hour is much more project oriented. That's what I meant. If you did a 200 hour with me, then you're ready for that. And if you didn't, then you have to have kind of, a bridge. And then the 300 hour, once you get to that level, it's like we do projects together. So projects will be, people are doing, some of my trainees are doing community, coming up with like community projects to help homeless shelters or certain demographics, or yoga in hospitals or yoga in businesses. And then we create websites together. We do even like a book. One of my students wrote a book. So, and then that was her project in the 300 hour. Another one started a juice bar, and it's like a juice bar / yoga. And so there's like that element, but that's when you get to that level, that's like, okay, now what's next? I didn't really talk about everything, all the different offerings that I have, but you guys can, I've been teaching yoga for 20 years. So, and really it's kind of more of a healing practice for me, body, mind, spirit, yoga on and off the mat. So with that, with so many trainings and so many teachers and mentoring, I've ended up doing life coaching trainings, and now I life coach for a lot of people. I do energy healing. I have the 200, 300 hour. I do a ton of online courses. Yeah, and I'm about to release a book. Okay, so you have an option to do um, the weekend, format that I have, and you can talk to me individually. Say you wanted to do 6 weekends, then there's different, like I said, because they have so much stuff going on, you could do part of it more online. If you want to do all of it in person, you can. I also hold these Zoom sessions every week for people who are in the 200, 300 and continuing education. They happen once a week, but they are recorded. So if you sign up for one and you can't make it and you want to listen to the recording, you get the recording, and then you have to do a session report, which I will tell you how to do to get credit for it. That's if you're in a teacher training. I have a lot of people who do the Zoom sessions, they're not in teacher training. What if you have something happen? People ask me that all the time. There's weddings. I mean, there's also getting sick. Life happens. There's anything could happen. Of course, you can miss a weekend. Do I recommend you miss weekend? No, quite frankly, you're not going to want to miss the weekends. I mean, people that are in the training, they want more. Everybody, even when they're graduating, it's like bittersweet. We want to keep going. You know what I mean? So you're going to want to be there. But if you can't be there, then you skip that weekend, catch up on the next one. Then can you make up that weekend? Absolutely. I teach workshops like all the time, you guys. I mean, I teach all the time. So maybe I'll place you in another training for a weekend if you're open to that, or maybe you'll come to a workshop, or you'll say, hey, you know what, let's do this online thing. And so, there's ways, but yes, life happens. Thank you so much, you guys. And I'm very passionate about all of these. As you can tell, we went over a little bit. I've been doing this my whole life. I love it. I absolutely love the trainings. I love yoga. I could talk forever about yoga. There's so much. There's so much to cover, and it's just so awesome. Why do I love it? It's changed my life. Not only it has changed my life to the better, but it changes my life each and every day, when I say practice, I don't mean vinyasa flow. I don't mean like yoga on the mat. That too, I love it. But I mean like something, journal, meditate, drink tea on a mindful living, you know what I mean? Like watch creative documentaries, like so just that mindset of yoga on and off the mat. Without yoga, I think my life would be very different. And the connections that I have made through yoga, this stuff works. I have seen hundreds, if not thousands of people's life transformed through yoga. So that's why I don't have any doubt. That's why I've been doing it for 20 years. And, this is my thing, and I'm very excited to share it with you all. This is great. When you learn it, it is a responsibility that you're not only going to help yourself, but you're going to help others. You're going to do this for yourself, and it's going to lighten up your life. And then it is your responsibility as a yogi to share it with the whole world. You start with who? Your family, your friends, your community, right? Animals, all beings are sacred. We're all equal. And so you become a Waishul, you become like you're, a light. You are a light in this planet. And we need more people like that. And that's why we need to have more of these. That's why we love yoga. So namaste.